Keir Starmer's days are numbered as his Chief of Staff Morgan McSweeney resigned yesterday, known to many as the Shadow Prime Minister and the brains of the entire Starmer project. Today, Scottish leader Anas Sarwar called on Keir Starmer to go. Starting with McSweeney, he said this in a statement. After careful reflection, I've decided to resign from the government. The decision to appoint Peter Mandelson was wrong. He has damaged our party, our country, and trust in politics itself. When asked, I advised the Prime Minister to make that appointment, and I take full responsibility for that advice. In public life, responsibility must be owned when it matters most, not just when it is most convenient. In the circumstances, the only honourable course is to step aside. This has not been an easy decision. Much has been written and said about me over the years, but my motivations have always been simple. I've worked every day to elect and support a government that puts the lives of ordinary people first and leads us to a better future for our great country. Only a Labour government will do that. I leave with pride in all we've achieved, mixed with regret at the circumstances of my departure. But I've always believed there are moments when you must accept your responsibility and step aside for the bigger cause. As I leave, I have two further reflections. Firstly, and most importantly, we must remember the women and girls whose lives were ruined by Jeffrey Epstein and whose voices went unheard for far too long. Secondly, while I did not oversee the due diligence and vetting process, I believe that process must now be fundamentally overhauled. This cannot simply be a gesture, but a safeguard for the future. I remain fully supportive of the Prime Minister. He is working every day to rebuild trust, restore standards, and serve the country. I will continue to back that mission in whatever way I can. It has been an honour of my life to serve. So much to unpack. But Starmer responded and said, it's been an honour working with McSweeney for many years. He turned our party around after one of its worst ever defeats and played a central role running our election campaign. It is largely thanks to his dedication, loyalty, and leadership that we won a landslide majority and have the chance to change the country. Oh, sorry, I've just seen something about Starmer telling Labour MPs I've won every fight I've ever been in, but we'll talk about that later as well. Having worked closely with Morgan in opposition and in government, I've seen every day his commitment to the Labour Party and to our country, our party, and I owe him a debt of gratitude and I thank him for his service. Sorry? Turned the party around after one of its worst ever defeats. You mean yours in comparison to Corbyn's, right? Starmer only won because the Tories lost. Let's not forget that. Anyway, McSweeney's resignation hasn't been met with much upset. You've got Carl Turner, Labour MP for East Hull, who tweeted, should think so, now let's move on. And another Labour MP told Sky News political reporter Ben Block that it should have been days ago. We're somehow able to mess up a resignation too. It's really embarrassing. But McSweeney still had his supporters chirping on Twitter. Can you hazard a guess who it might have been? If you guessed Luke Akehurst, I'm pretty impressed. This finalist guy tweeted, sorry to see this decision by Morgan. It's a very dignified statement and reflects the character of someone I know to be thoughtful and dedicated to Labour and the security and prosperity of the country. I think one of the biggest mysteries is how Akehurst has made it this far in politics, when he has the political foresight of a blind hamster and the likability of a head lice. But we move on. Before we recap McSweeney's tenure, a few hours before he resigned, Work and Pensions Secretary Pat McFadden said this on the BBC Sunday with Laura Koonsberg.
David Blunkett, for example, in the last few minutes has told our colleagues on Radio 4 that to move on, the Prime Minister should move on his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. Would that be a way forward? Some people believe that's part of a solution for you.
I see no point in that whatsoever. In fact, I think if the Prime Minister stays there, I don't think that would make any difference at all. And to call for changes of staff, I've seen this before. I don't think it makes a difference. I think the Prime Minister should continue with what he's doing. He's focused on the cost of living. He wants to deliver for the British people. We've had some signs of that nobody knows about because of the stories we've seen, but we've had better than expected growth. We've got NHS waiting lists falling. We've got the Governor of the Bank of England saying inflation will come down to target this year. Probably another interest rate cut this year.
Own party,
these things will feed through during the course of the year.
Focusing on.
I think, well, at least now we know Starmer didn't need to. Yeah, Morgan could do it on his own. And I think we can all say good riddance to McSweeney. But do you know what I think? I think Morgan should have never even been allowed the dignity of a resignation. Just my personal opinion. Because that is not a man of honour stepping aside, by the way. It's a fixer caught in a storm of his own making. Lest we forget, Morgan McSweeney didn't just advise Starmer, he built him from the illegal £730,000 campaign that took down Jeremy Corbyn to the corporate policy machine he set up behind closed doors. McSweeney was the shadowy architect of Labour's rightward lurch. So let's call it what it is, a shameless attempt to launder his own legacy the moment it falls apart. And let us not overlook the fact that it is a man he's a man who's considered Mandelson's protege, the Dark Prince's protege, that's what they call him. Slimy and instrumental in appointing and putting Mandelson in power. But that being said, I don't even think that that's probably the worst thing that he's done. I really want to go into what he did to Corbyn in a second. But McSweeney's been consistently corrupt. McSweeney's first taste of electoral politics came in 2001 when his task was to input data into Peter Mandelson's renowned Excalibur computer, which stored so much information on how to campaign and coordinate, and then eventually use this information against people if and when needed. And this is exactly what happened with Corbyn in 2017 when he lost the election, despite getting 40% of the vote and almost 13 million behind him, which, by the way, is way more than what Labour got when they won the election in 2024. McSweeney made it his mission to utterly purge the left of the party and take Corbyn down. In the book, Get In, the inside story of Labour under Starmer journalists Gabriel Pogrund and Patrick Maguire, stated that the key weapon they alighted on was allegations of anti Semitism. Labour Together aimed, McSweeney wrote in an early confidential strategy paper, to cultivate, quote unquote, seemingly independent voices, generate and share content to build up a political narrative and challenge fake news and political extremism. But was any of that to Labour's benefit at all? The polls say otherwise. If anything, you have Starmer thanking McSweeney for bringing Labour out of a disastrous loss from Corbyn. But from what I see, Labour support has plummeted in some pretty disgraceful ways. Since McSweeney joined Starmer's Downing Street staff, Labour's support has fallen by 15 points. And you can see July 2024, 34.7, and then February 2026, 19.4%. And I'm also really curious about the honorability he's attached to his resignation here. Like, I don't, is it in the room with us? I don't know. Because if there's anyone that will destroy anyone who gets in his way, and he will do it at the expense of the party if he has to, it's McSweeney. This is a man who, far from putting ordinary people first, actively undermined the most working class focused, possibly, political movement in Britain that had seen in decades when we've had Corbyn. He didn't just sideline Corbynism, he coordinated its destruction in ways that were so unforgivable. I mean, I said it already, but the £730,000 in undeclared funds is no joke to back Keir Starmer's leadership campaign. And those funds were tied to powerful private interests and lobbyists and pro-Israel donors who explicitly wanted Labour's socialist wing crushed under Corbyn. And it worked. But I really want to focus on this idea of ordinary people, because I swear under McSweeney's strategy, Labour abandoned and continues to want to abandon public ownership pledges and dumped the £28 billion green investment plan that would have created thousands of jobs and tackled maybe, the climate crisis. Labour, ditching rent caps, but then trying to get back on that and talking about it again. Just, I don't know. They say they're in favour of this fiscal responsibility. I always remember that seeing them in Parliament talk about fiscal responsibility, but who are you doing that for? I think it's only to appease the city. And then you've got Labour cozying up to BlackRock, the world's biggest asset manager, a firm that profits off global housing crisis and climate breakdown. So I don't know, that's not about putting ordinary people first. That's putting shareholders first and hedge funds first and media barons first. So McSweeney says resigning is the only honourable course, but he's not resigning because of the £730,000 in dark money, not because of the strategic purge of the left of the party, not because Labour has plunged to 18% in the polls under his direction. He's resigning because of that backlash to his puppet pastor, puppet master move, even is installing Peter Mandelson, a man tainted by his links to Jeffrey Epstein, because it became too big to spin. And I don't really see McSweeney, apologising for that decision until the moment it became a political liability, which means that his resignation is the most dishonourable thing that you could probably come across. Is complete damage control. So I think the chips are crumbling because another resignation has hit number 10. Keir Starmer's director of communications has resigned. Tim Allen said, I've decided to stand down to allow a new number 10 team to be built. I wish the PM and his team every success. Alex Wickham. But I think the thing that's kind of getting everyone's interest is this impromptu press conference called by the Scottish Labour leader, Anna Sarwar, that will be the final nail in the coffin.
I have a genuine friendship with Keir Starmer, but my first priority and my first loyalty is to my country, Scotland. And I am not willing to sacrifice Scotland's NHS, our schools, our communities, our towns, cities, villages and islands to a third decade of an SNP government. That's why the distraction needs to end and the leadership in Downing Street has to change.
But it's just so insane. There's so much unfolding right now. Ashok, give me your thoughts, please. What are your thoughts?
Yes.
Was it inevitable?
Okay, well, obviously, firstly, let's just take a moment and just bathe in the. I mean, it's just like today I saw a tweet where someone was like, the people that are celebrating are all the Corbynites. I'm like, yeah, we were brutally chased and like pushed out of. I mean, I wasn't, but I mean, the people. I mean, I was never a member, but I'm just saying, like, they just villainized us and demonized us, and we can't celebrate that it's finally the chickens come home to roost. Come on, get lost. I mean, and also, Anis Anwar's speech, it's like he wants to prevent another SNP. Who's going to break it to him? They're going to crush you guys. What remains, the tiny bits of labor that remain in Scotland, are going to just be evacuated, And yeah, I mean, it's just great. And I think, even the recent polls that came out, the complete collapse of labor in Scotland and Wales, and what's going to happen is Plaid Cymru for the first time. Center left. I mean, they were more left wing with the previous leadership, but they're still much more left wing than Labour. And you're going to have Greens be the kingmakers in Scotland and Wales, and that's almost guaranteed this May, which sets the tone for what's possible. We can get into that in a minute, but I think it's very clear why the Scottish Labour leader said this. I mean, there could be a cynical reading that he's trying to hedge his bets, and he's been put up to do this by Waz or something, but also it's very, very clear that Starmer's days are numbered, and that if he's in when May rolls around, let's say, and there's no possibility of him being out, that it's going to be a complete wipeout. It's already going to be a wipeout, but it'll even be even more of a wipeout. And so I think that's a recognition of that. And yeah, it's a question of when Starmer is going to set down. Will it be in the next week, or will it be in the next month or 2 months? I mean, that's really the question. I mean, he's basically a lame duck at this point. And I just saw, I mean, their comms team is on overdrive. Maybe it was like an hour and a half ago, I saw it was put out that it said, Keir Starmer received a standing ovation and a 37-second applause as he entered the room to speak to Labour MPs. It's like, first of all, that's very easy to orchestrate, especially amongst the lemmings that make up the Parliamentary Labour Party. I mean, if Keir Starmer is the most cowardly person, his cowardice is only outmatched by the utterly contemptible Parliamentary Labour Party. But that clapping is because it's basically a funeral, And it's like, what are they clapping for? What are they actually clapping for? Starving Palestinian British children. It's like, he's just dead. He's a dead man walking, and so that's what it's a recognition of that. And it's like, you're not actually clapping for anything. It's like he hasn't accomplished anything other than pushing out the left, and he's been in for a year and a half. And people who will be running for the leadership of the Labour Party will be running from his record. And it'll be very difficult for some people. It'll be difficult for people like Wes Streeting and others, but that will be the campaign. It'll be, how are we different from Starmer in every way? And if you look at the WhatsApp messages that Wes just released, and I don't really know why he released, because he just released them now. Someone's going to have to explain to me why he released these, because it doesn't look good. And it makes he's just constantly sending kisses to Peter Mendelsohn, and Mendelssohn's sending him kisses back. And I'm like, why would you release this? This is totally embarrassing. I mean, just like, do you have a humiliation kink? I mean, what is going on here? But I think part of the reason that he did it was because the ones that got highlighted, and this is how you can tell how things are comps are framing things. The ones that are highlighted are the ones where he says, "Oh, Labour's toast under Starmer, and I'm toast." This is because he had just lost by 500, or he had just won by 500 votes, barely won against Liad Mohammed. It's like, yeah, you are toast. But if he takes over the Labour Party, he could then obviously choose a different seat to become like an MP, and obviously that's embarrassing for most people. But we have to remember that these people have no conception of shame, none. They're just like an amalgam of like tissue and bone material that's motivated purely by power and ambition. It's grotesque. These people are grotesque. And West Reading, he looks like a kind of Victorian doll who's then only motivated by ambition and power. And so you see also part of those messages also say it has in there, oh, Israel's all obviously committing war crimes. This man is the most cynical, most obsessed with power. I mean, I knew him when I was sabbatical officer at LSE and he was president of the NUS. Completely craven, completely opportunistic. And so he's obviously potentially released this because then he knows that if there's a well-known left, soft left candidate, someone like Andy Burnham or Ad Miliband or Angela Rayner, if they are selected, the membership will elect them. And so what he's done is systematically tried to push them out. He works on blocking Andy Burnham. I mean, we don't know for certain, but it's almost certainly he may have played a part in releasing the Angela Rayner taxation story that pushed her out, or was the pretext for which she was pushed out. So it's very the only way he sees winning is by pushing out any viable soft left candidate. And so I think it's going to be very hard for him to do that against Ed Miliband. And so the soft left candidate against him will be Ed Miliband. That's my guess. And then he'll have a hard time winning. And you even look at the recent polls. It says, I mean, you have a parliamentary Labour Party that's really concerned about how they're going to keep their £94,000 plus benefits job a year to do nothing. And so they're going to be concerned about a West Reading because there was a YouGov poll that just came out that said if he gets selected as the Labour Party leader, the Labour Party's support will collapse. This is YouGov. This is the main polls for the country. Says that the Labour will collapse to just 5%. It will basically not exist. It'll be the Green Party 6 years ago, what they were polling at 5%. So it'll be a complete wipeout. And so people, especially Labour MPs who are just suckling from the teat of power, will be particularly aware that how unpopular not only Starmer is, but a Starmerite like Wes Streeting, who's even more Starmerish than Starmer himself, and is deeply unlikable. I mean, you have to understand, if anyone has met any of these people in the Labour Party who are moderates, they're not just like terrible people. They're also deeply unlikable. So it's like the perfect, and also like soul-crushingly uncharismatic. So it's like, what is going on here? What are they offering? And they're offering nothing. So that's my take. That's my hot take.